Hello there. I'm Bruce Maples, publisher of Forward Kentucky, and today we're bringing you another explainer from Forward Kentucky on what is habeas corpus and why you should care about that. Before we begin, let me remind you to like this video and to subscribe so you can get all of our videos and be notified when we have new ones. All right, let's get to the topic of today. What is habeas corpus and why you should care? So in this explainer, we're going to talk about what does the term mean, where did it come from, has habeas corpus ever been suspended in the United States, what is the Trump administration considering, which is why you should be paying attention to this, what would this mean for the country, and what if it's actually suspended? So let's cover these topics. First off, what does the term habeas corpus mean? Well, it's from the Latin. It actually means you should have the body. And basically what it is an appeal to a court to say that somebody, some government custodian, is holding a person unlawfully. You go to the court and you say, this person has been detained. We think they're being detained illegally. We would like something done about it. So then the court issues a writ of habeas corpus to the custodian holding the person, saying, please come before the court, bring the person with you. That's why it says you should have the body. Bring them with you and explain under what authority you are holding them. What gave you the authority to detain this person? And if the court finds that whomever this is exceeded their authority, the person must be released. This is a very simple concept. You go to the court, you say, I think this person's being held illegally. The court sends a writ, an order, to the custodian holding the person, bring the person, and explain yourself. And if they can't explain themselves adequately, then the person is released. So where did this use of habeas corpus come from? Well, it comes from English law. A long time ago, in 1215, the Magna Carta was signed, written and signed. It was the first document to put into writing the principle that the king was not above the law. And so in the Magna Carta, there is the concept of habeas corpus. No one can be held without due process of law. The U.S. Constitution picked that up. Everybody who helped write the Constitution was familiar with the concept, and they included it in the first article of the Constitution. The privilege of the writ of habeas corpus shall not be suspended unless, when in cases of rebellion or invasion, the public safety may require it. Now, pay attention to that phrase right there, shall not be suspended unless rebellion or invasion. The Supreme Court of the United States has said that the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus is the fundamental instrument for safeguarding individual freedom against arbitrary and lawless state action. It is a critical part of our Constitution and is a critical part of the rule of law in the United States. Has habeas corpus ever been suspended? Yes. Multiple times during the Civil War, President Lincoln at various times suspended habeas corpus for certain parts of the country or for certain purposes. However, the first time he did it on his own using an executive order, and the Supreme Court said, no, you can't do that. Only Congress can suspend habeas corpus. So from that point forward, whenever he wanted to do it, felt the need to do it, he had to work with Congress to get it suspended. During Reconstruction, there were some counties in South Carolina that were being overrun by the KKK, and President Johnson suspended habeas corpus only in those counties. In the Philippines, in 1905, there was something of an insurrection, and they suspended habeas corpus just there for about 6 months, I believe. And then in Hawaii, after the attack on Pearl Harbor, which makes sense, it was suspended for anybody they suspected of being a spy or an agent of the Japanese or the Germans. Notice that all of these are during times of what are obvious situations of war or insurrection or invasion, and so it's very clear that the suspension clause of the Constitution applied. So what is the Trump administration considering? Stephen Miller, who is the White House Deputy Chief of Staff, had sort of an impromptu press conference in the driveway of the White House on May 9th, and he told some reporters that the Trump administration is actively evaluating the possibility of suspending habeas corpus, which is one reason I'm doing this explainer right now. He said, the Constitution is clear, and that, of course, is the supreme law of the land, that the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus can be suspended at a time of invasion. Now you're thinking, wait a minute, where are we being, what invasion is he talking about? Well, he's using Trump's description of undocumented immigrants entering the country as an invasion. Now, I think if you were to ask most of the people living along the southern border if we were being invaded, if this was an actual invasion, they would say, no, it's a problem, but it's not an invasion. And yet, that's what the Trump administration is claiming. So here's a question. Would Congress give its approval if they wanted to do this? Well, consider this Congress. It's run by Republicans who are terrified of Trump, and I suspect that they would approve it. And then it would go to the courts and ultimately to the Supreme Court, and we'd have to see if they said that was okay. So what would this mean if this happened? Well, it would depend on how broad the suspension was. Remember, it can be very narrow or it can be very broad. If it's only undocumented immigrants, then it just says, if you're an undocumented immigrant, we can arrest you. You don't have habeas corpus. You can't appeal to the courts. You don't have due process. We can hold you. We can ship you wherever. You don't have any recourse. It could be any immigrants. We've already seen examples of people who are here legally, who have green cards, and they have been detained by the Trump administration. And so far, they've been able to go to the courts and in some cases get relief. But if they suspend habeas corpus for those people, nobody can go to the courts for them. We have seen this as well, people helping immigrants. At certain points in history, habeas corpus has been suspended not only for a group of people, but for anybody helping that group of people. This would include lawyers doing immigration law. It could include relief agencies. It could include churches. It could include anybody who is helping immigrants. Or it could just be anyone. The Trump administration could try to suspend habeas corpus for anybody they deem to be a threat to the country, which would mean, of course, somebody opposed to them. So it would mean you, your children, your brother, sister, your parents, your friends, anybody in the country could be arrested without recourse to the courts and held forever, or shipped overseas, or disappeared. That's the term of art in some countries. Somebody was just disappeared. We have no idea what happened to them. This is what suspension of habeas corpus could mean for the United States. Do we have anything to look to in history? Yes. Nazi Germany, in February after the Reichstag fire, suspended habeas corpus for the entire country. Basically, the government said anybody that we suspect of being a threat, and they didn't specify clearly threat to the country or threat to our rule in the country, could be arrested. Well, what happened? Thousands were arrested. They were held without trial. There was no recourse to the courts. The courts couldn't do anything. Nobody could do anything. Those people were simply arrested, detained, maybe disappeared. So what should we do if habeas corpus is suspended in the United States? Well, that would be time to hit the streets. This is one of the fundamental principles of our democracy. Remember, the king is not above the law. So this, in our case, the president is not above the law. The rule of law applies to everyone, and habeas corpus is written into our Constitution. We have the right to file a writ of habeas corpus and ask for someone who's being detained to be brought before the courts, and for the people detaining them to explain, why are you holding them? If this is suspended, it is serious. I don't mean to exaggerate. I'm not trying to engage in hyperbole, but this is one of those things in the middle of all the news that we're hearing that you absolutely have to watch. And if something happens with this, it's going to be time to hit the streets.